Welcome to We Hear Her. I'm Erin Trenbeth Murray, and I'm here today with another amazing woman who is sharing her story and insights into life lessons learned. Hi there, I'm Erin Trenbeth Murray with the We Hear Her podcast for Women Who Succeed. Happy to have you here today, and my guest is Dana Grinnell, who I have just gotten to know recently and have been fascinated with her interest in women and finance and how they can become more independent, more strategic and thoughtful about their financial investing. I also love that she is in Park City and a skier and has young children, and so I'm excited to talk with her today. But let me tell you a little bit about her, because she was in the medical device industry for about 17 years and shifted gears, and we're going to be talking a little bit with her about that shift. But this is a little bit more about her. She says she dabbed a little bit in different business models after her 17 years in what she likes to call that she's a recovered corporate executive, which I love that so much. She launched a company called Pretty Smart Plus Badass. Is that right? Okay, want to make sure I said it correctly, but we'll have to go into that. I remember you and I talking about that, which was a company built to empower women to exploit their inner badass in and out of work. COVID and the new baby put that company on the back burner, but ignited the opportunity for her to co-found Grinnell Capital with her husband, Frank. He is a long-time institutional advisor to professional money managers, investors, and portfolio managers for large Wall Street firms. So they basically took their talents together and decided to do it themselves and now have Grinnell Capital. And you are a mom of 3 awesome and happy kids and are up in Park City. She says anywhere that she can take a trail on foot, bike, or skis. She's a world traveler, an avid yogi, and a dedicated foodie. So thank you, Dana, for being here today.
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
I love that so much. I first want to start with the yogi.
Yeah.
Tell me a little. I want to hear about that.
Oh, yogi. It's become just kind of part of my life. I started it 20 years ago and actually had, gone through various levels of commitment, maybe once a week, maybe a couple times a week, dabbled in and out. But actually now Frank and I do it together every morning. 5 a.m. We get up, the house is quiet. We do it in our living room. We turn the fire on.
Nice.
And that's kind of our morning ritual, which, he just kind of got into it about 2 years ago. But he's actually helped keep me accountable because, like I said, I'd kind of ebb and flow in and out of dedicated to it. So I love it. It's just a wonderful.
Your kids?
I think they like it. They don't love it.
Yeah.
The 3-year-old's probably better at it than the others. So
good. What a great way to ground yourself and center yourself for the day.
For sure. And the days I miss it, I notice it in my day. I notice that I feel different. So.
Well, I was so happy to get to meet you because when we got talking, and I do remember we went to lunch and you were telling me about your previous business. It was like a perfect fit with Women Who Succeed.
Oh, thanks.
And so tell us, I want you to share with everybody a little bit about what took you down that path to create that company.
The Pretty Smart. Okay, so my daughter calls it Pretty Smart and Bad A word. That might be more appropriate for the audience. So I spent 17 years in the medical device business, and I had one of those moments where I knew I had to go. I knew I had to change and do something different, which came with a lot of fear and emotion. And I actually spent 4 or 5 months in career counseling, making sure I was making the right choice. But at the end of the day, I made the choice and I just cold turkey left the business and really needed to find something to do. I was looking in healthcare startups. I worked for a very large healthcare firm. And so I was thinking, a startup might be fun. And as I did that, I got really involved in the entrepreneurial community in Denver and just got inspired to start something. So I would say it was more of a passion project than a business that had a good business model or a business model that could propel it into, some sort of profitability.
Yeah.
But it was a really awesome experience. And essentially, it was just to help women. I felt like in the corporate world, there's so many trainings and courses you can take, but do they really help you as a human, inside and outside of work? And then outside of work, we're so busy, it's hard to find the time to go and really, go into the weeds on training and improving yourself. So we did things like we did an investing course, we did self-defense, we did all sorts of events where we connected really experienced women with maybe less experienced women, a lot like Women Who Succeed, which is really neat because we saw really experienced women finding, young women who had just gone off on their own as a designer and hiring them in their big firm to do a project. And people, hired each other, and it was
Really lifting each other up.
exactly just making connections. So it was great. But then COVID happened. And so the events became really difficult to pull off. And then I had a baby, and the rest is history.
Right.
So,
Those unexpected turns in life,
yeah.
journeys that happens.
Yes.
When we'd had, when I've had the last few podcast interviews, the word fear has come up pretty much, I think, in every interview. But when I have fear, I think I'm the only person that has doubt. I'm the only person that feels I can't do this, or I'm feeling like I'm fearful that this is, I'm worried. I use the word worried a lot. I'm worried that this might happen. What do you think is your best way that you combat that when the voice comes and puts doubt in your mind, or the fear starts to creep in?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, coming into finance, I really struggled with that a lot. Kind of that, I think they call it imposter syndrome, fear, worry, anxiety, all the words. And so first of all, I've realized finance to me was very scary. And I'm one of those women who was not a good investor. I let my husband run the ship, and here I am in this role now, like, wait a second, why did I do that? Like, I need to make sure women feel empowered. And so what I've learned having been in this role is that sometimes coming in with a fresh perspective is a good thing. I was really fearful about being good enough, knowing enough, being able to talk the talk. And now I look back and think, actually, I think my fresh perspective gives a whole different angle on how to do things differently. And we've been able to innovate and really take our firm to a place that other firms may not have gone because I don't have those filters. So I guess long way of saying, I think trying to turn fear into something that charges you or puts you into a more innovative state or more creative state is maybe one way to channel it.
To solve it.
Yeah, to just channel it in a positive direction.
Curious about it.
I think fear is a really natural and an emotion that, it makes us human. But if there's a way to kind of pivot into something that's constructive. But I also read a book recently that was really great called Positive Intelligence.
I haven't read that.
It's really interesting. It's a quick read, but he talks about the 12 saboteurs and identifying everyone has, saboteurs is basically the inner voice that tells you you can't do that, or you're, this or that. And he talks about mindfulness as a way to sort of overcome those saboteurs when they start talking to you, focusing on a physical feeling in your body rather than letting that voice,
Take over.
Yeah, so it's a good book.
I'll have to look that one up.
Yeah.
So when you moved into this new role, talk to me a little bit about that, because I thought, no, if I could work with my husband all day and then not be working, but would be working, and I'm a workaholic, so I'd be talking all the time. I already talk pretty much about work nonstop, and so.
Yeah.
But what is that? Both. What is that like with? Let's start with that. What is that like with your relationship with him and your family to have your work and your personal life completely intertwined?
Yeah. It's funny because we don't share a closet. I mean, this is just like a marital rule. We've almost been married 20 years. Like we don't closet together because he's too messy. So it's interesting that we can work together. And I actually never thought we could either. But we were in this position. It was COVID. He's launching this company. I was kind of in the entrepreneurial state of mind. And it just sort of happened.
Yeah.
But it's actually been working out way better than I would have thought. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we have very different skill sets. And we have mutual respect for each other's skill sets. And neither of us could do the business without the other. So there's kind of that, I need what he does and he needs what I do. So that's
a perfect marriage.
It works well in business. It is tricky to try to separate business. And in fact, we just had a conversation recently. We really try to keep business during business hours and when we're sitting around the table with our kids.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tempting to go and try to talk about, I just had an idea, or,
yes.
I thought of this, but we're trying to do a better job of not doing that.
Those boundaries, that's got to be so difficult.
Yeah,
difficult.
I think that's the hardest part, honestly.
Well, tell me more about your specific role in the company.
Yeah, so he's been a long time Wall Street investor.
Yeah.
So he runs all the investments, and that's kind of his passion, and that's what he's best at. He's also the chief compliance officer, thank goodness, because I really don't want anything to do with compliance. No offense to you compliance people out there. So my role is really kind of the strategy and the operation side of the business. One of the things I'm really excited about, we've decided to go into a full service wealth management service. Up to this point, we've been more of an asset manager for professional financial planners. We're now going to do it ourselves we're really interested in making it more approachable and bringing more women, young couples, people who have had a bad experience in the industry. So I've kind of been the brainchild behind it, just coming up with a strategy and thinking about how can we do this differently. And kind of to my first comment about trying to channel fear into creativity and innovation, it's really come out of that, kind of finally took my barriers down and said, all right, I'm in this, and I want to do a good job. How can we do something that maybe the industry hasn't done before? So my role is kind of right now really the strategy side of it. And then ultimately, as we launch this wealth management platform, it'll be the client interface and really kind of making sure the experience is, exceptional.
Yeah.
They feel well taken care of. Well,
And lately, and probably back to your first, you said your cause or what you said, not maybe what word wasn't cause. You said it was different than a business, wasn't? But your passion for women and finance, you've alluded to a few times today. Tell me more about some of the specific things that you're hoping or wanting to do in your role in your company to help women be more independent, educated, thoughtful. How does that look for you?
yeah, no, I get so fired up, and which shows me I actually really do like finance. I thought going into this industry, I don't know if I can do this. But it really gets me excited because I feel like there's so much. I've personally felt so empowered just knowing more about my money and knowing more about investing. And I just really want to help women see that. But I've gone to a number of conferences and I sit in the room and think, no wonder women don't want to do this. Like, this is really intimidating. It's very old school feeling. It just doesn't feel approachable. It doesn't feel empowering.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to flip that coin. And what we're planning to do is take more of a life-focused approach on wealth management. So really helping clients think about a life vision to the point where we'd even produce a vision board for them. And then translating that into what we're calling the money plan, things like debt reduction, savings, budgeting, all those more tactical financial aspects. And then once we get that, and we'd have coaches along the way to help clients one-on-one figure out that aspect, then we would create short and long-term accounts that are actively invested. So the client has a real picture of what they're going for. And if it's camping every summer, $20 for a campsite, or if it's the trip to, trip of a lifetime around the world, let's make sure that we're heading in that direction with finances, and the finances align with their values and their life plan.
Do you find that I've heard, and my friends that I've talked with, many of them are embarrassed to come forward and say, I really don't know what's going on with my finances that much, to the level that my husband does.
Right.
He's doing our investing, and what trend or what do you think would be a first step for a woman who's thinking, you know what, I really should be more engaged. I got to step forward on this.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing is just know you're not alone. I mean, I was there. I did well in my medical device career, and my husband ran our finances. I had no idea. So don't feel alone, and know that it's never too late to start now, really. So I think the first step is really understanding what accounts you do have. If they're old 401ks, if they're IRAs, if it's a savings account, whatever your accounts are, kind of get a grasp on where they all are, and yours and your husband's, if as a household, where are those accounts? I think the next step, we're actually planning to roll out a platform that'll have really user-friendly education. So our plan is my husband will speak to the technical side of whatever topic we're talking about, and then I will break it down into layman's terms. So if we're talking what's a mutual fund, he'll tell us what a mutual fund is, and I'll tell you, well, it's basically like a big pizza, and there's lots of toppings on it, and your slice of that pizza is, your share of that mutual fund. So we're going to try to make it really user friendly. And there's a lot of platforms that do that right now. So you can certainly come to ours, but there's a lot of really great ones, and there are actually some really great ones geared specifically to women. So maybe just, picking away at 5 minutes here or there, looking at some of those platforms, I think is a good step.
Oh, no, they need to go to yours. When you get it going. No, I love that. It's brilliant because you get the credibility and you're so generous and say, my husband is this is his thing. He is the expert in the technical elements. And then you've got this perfect yin and yang of how you take that credibility from his expertise, and then you make it user friendly, and you make it approachable, and you make it doable and reasonable.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic.
Well, thank you. I mean, that's our goal. And I'm just, I'm one of those women. So I feel like I'm just trying to offer up what would have helped me or what would currently help me feel more empowered. Because like I said, I've been in this finance industry for 2 years, and it's completely like the switch is flipped. I feel really interested and empowered, and I feel like there's so much to do. There's no reason to sit in the sidelines. And actually, women statistically are better investors. So it's actually in your husband's best interest for you to be involved. So if you get pushback there, that's one thing to point out.
Well, and when you just said, I want to make it easier for them. And before the podcast, you and I spoke a little bit about both of our passions, which is the whole point of why we have Women Who Succeed, is to make that learning curve shorter, to make it a little easier for young women to have a little bit more of a leg up than I did when I was 20. You spoke to my mentees, you and your husband, last month on our monthly mentoring meeting. And all three of them have started doing some of the work that we suggested.
Oh, good.
We've had some great conversations, and they just really loved and appreciated it. It was exciting for me to see, an 18-year-old to a 21-year-old, those three, they were fearful. They were embarrassed. They didn't know where to begin. They are just barely, learning how to pay rent, learning how to pay utilities. So let alone to have a conversation about bonds. They asked about bonds. They asked about stocks. They asked about IRA. They asked about, and you were talking to them about high yield savings accounts and those small, tiny steps that they can do when they are 20 years old, and what a substantial difference that will make in the long run. I hope someday your module expands to, or even you said young couples, but even like somehow to that education of that really young age group, 18, 19, 20, 21 years.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I'm most excited about with what we're working on is to build the framework and make the business. There's a profitability component, right, that every business has to have. But what I'm really excited about is being able to give that education to all different subsets of folks. Actually, I have a really good girlfriend that I grew up with, and she started an organization called Free to Fly. And they help survivors of human trafficking get back on their feet. So we're going to participate in a program that she's putting together. We're going to be the financial component to help educate them on money. So absolutely. I mean, we love to educate, and if there's ever a need, and it doesn't have to be prospects to invest in what we do. If it's just people who need the education, I think that's just part of my passion. So that's absolutely something we'd love to do. And I loved your mentees were so great. I don't believe that they were fearful because they had really good questions, and you could tell they'd really done some homework. So it gives me a lot of hope that this generation of women they really want to take ownership over their money and their finances. So I thought it was really awesome to see.
I think I've seen a lot of that as we've just been doing Women Who Succeed for 2 years, not very long. But the young women that we're working with, they really expect that they are going to own so much more of their life than my generation did, whether it's their education or it's their finances or what they're going to do with their families. Like, there's a very strong independence that I love seeing in these women.
It's
so cool.
So awesome and so encouraging. And I just hope that one of them runs for president.
I know, right?
Crushes it, So
I know I'd love to see a female president before I die. That would be awesome. Your kids, you have 3, and boys or girls?
So I have 2 boys and a girl.
Girl.
Yeah.
So when they look to their mom as they get a little older, your 3-year-old gets a little older and such, what are you hoping are the characteristics that they see in you as a mom, as a female, as a wife? What do you hope when they're, sitting on a podcast at age 40 and they say, you know what my mom was like?
Yeah.
And they say this, what do you hope they say?
That's such a good question. I mean, I definitely want them to feel that they can do anything. I think that society kind of puts this a little bit of a schedule in front of us, and there's even more pressures now with social media and whatnot. And so I just really hope that they can like dig down and find their authentic self and put that forward into the world and not worry so much about money, not worry about the right thing to do, the conventional thing to do, to really just move forward as the human they want to be. And so I hope that I'm encouraging them to do that. Um, I think I'd like them to, I think being an entrepreneur is really challenging, but also really rewarding. And so I hope that they can see that and take that into whatever they do in life. My son right now, my 13-year-old really wants to be an NFL player. So great. I hope he can do that. And, but again, I hope that he sees, that there's more possibilities beyond that if the NFL thing doesn't work out.
They'll look at their mom and say, she was a risk taker. She was an
Yeah.
entrepreneur. She was a dreamer.
Yeah, exactly. A dreamer and kind of also not settling for status quo. I mean, that was one thing when my husband and I made this strategic decision to do a full wealth management service. I told him, I'm like, we're not going to do this the same way everyone does it. I don't want to do that. It's not serving most of the people out there. People are just kind of pigeonholed into this the way it's always been. And I just don't want to do that. So if we're going to do this, it's going to have to be different, which that's kind of what we're fixing. So yeah, again, I hope my kids feel like they can be trailblazers and be their authentic selves. And I think that's to me what success is.
Love that. You said once, and I'm not sure if you said it or I read it, that you wished that you would have pivoted earlier in your career.
Yeah.
And been strong enough or felt that you compelled that you could do that. I was and it could be some generational stuff too. I was in the same career for a long time and loved it for sure. But I was stuck at times and I did not take I wasn't bold and didn't take the leap to shift.
Yeah.
Why do you think that you didn't make the shift earlier than when you did?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I've reflected on this a lot. And I've actually written a few articles on LinkedIn about it. I honestly think it came down to my ego. And I'd had success. I made really good money. I was getting promoted. I was actually relocated by the company to another region. They tapped me on the shoulder to take over a region that was kind of a sinking ship. They had the confidence that I could turn it around. All these little steps, I think there was like an ego component. And I actually remember very clearly, there was a day I was driving home. It was snowing at the time. I lived in Denver. It was snowing, and it was one of those nights like I had, 2 different babysitters changing shifts. And I mean, it was just like chaos. And I think there was like this momentary like glimpse where my ego just went away. And I thought, like, what am I doing? I don't have to do this anymore. Like, I can do other things. And so the paycheck went away. They came and picked up the company car. My 401k, we rolled that into, IRAs, which we now invest. All those benefits. And I worked for a company that was really generous with benefits. It all went away. The title, it all went away. And at the moment, I was so panicked and fearful and all the things, like questioning if I could do this, if I could be successful in any other business. And I wish I would have done it sooner, so.
Do you think your identity got wrapped up in that title and that role?
For sure. Especially
when I left as a CEO, I was like, who am I now?
Yeah.
I'm not sure who I am. I'm not sure what my identity is.
Definitely. And so many professional friends and 100%. I mean, I think that was one of the biggest considerations in leaving is all that. Now, and when I left, I sort of thought, I'll either go work for a startup or I'm leaving healthcare altogether. So that was another thing I like, kind of a parameter I put up for myself through, career counseling. I kind of figured that out. But yeah, it's, I think it was a really good exercise though, because now I see my identity probably truly, my identity is more authentic to who I am as a person. And there's so many things I learned along the way, and I wouldn't exchange those experiences for anything, because that's definitely contributed to what I'm doing now. But I learned that you have transferable skills. I was in this one line, one division, I worked in medical devices, in spine, in sales, and sales leadership. And I just didn't know if there was anything I could do outside of that. And what I've proven to myself is those skills transfer to any industry, to any type of company, and to any role, including, starting your own company. So I think it's a good exercise to really try to detach your identity from your job, and also to just see if your ego is in the way at all. Is it the paycheck? Is it the title? Is it the trajectory? Is that what's keeping you there? Or do you really love it and you really think that this is who you are?
Wow. 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 I love your advice so much. So much. Well, I cannot thank you enough for being here today.
Sure, of course.
There were so many golden nuggets there and so many things I want to reflect on myself. And I'm sure the women and the young women that watch this podcast will feel the same way. So thank you for giving of your time.
My pleasure.
Your company has, of course, you need to have a bottom line, but you also definitely clearly have this more altruistic, empowering element to it, which is really evident. And
thank you.
I wish you the very best.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Well, I'm such an honor to be here. I love being part of Women Who Succeed. It's certainly been a great fit. Just good. So thank you so much.
Pleasure. Well, thank you for joining us today for the We Hear Her podcast and Women Who Succeed. And we will see you next time. Thank you for taking the time to hear her. Join our efforts and learn more about Women Who Succeed at womenwhosucceed.org.